Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Neotype LM02 Type C. This watch is available from neotypewatches.com for €595. Neotype are a well-established microbrand. They were founded in 2020 in Paris, France. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this black cardboard sleeve. On the top of the sleeve we have the Neotype logo and also the Neotype emblem, which is an X, and on the top and the front of the sleeve we have the specifications of the piece detailed. So one withdraws the watch box from the sleeve, and this is the watch box itself. Matte grey, made from cardboard, very aesthetically pleasing because in large letters we have the Neotype logo, and on the front it also says limited edition in large letters, and this confirms that this piece, the LM02 Type C, is a limited edition of 150 numbered pieces. So one removes the lid to the base, which is a snug fit due to the vacuum effect. And inside we have a black foam cutout panel in the profile of a watch, which does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. One can remove it, and inside the base there's a second foam cutout panel. The left hand cutout houses the plastic warranty card, right hand cutout houses the spare FKM floor rubber strap, which is sand tone or khaki. So good presentation, and although it's cardboard it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping, and it is aesthetically pleasing. With regards to items that come with a piece, it comes with this plastic warranty card, Neotype logo on the front. On the reverse, it details the reference number for the piece and also the serial number. And as I've detailed, the LM02 Type C is a limited edition production run of 150 unique numbered pieces. This is number 011/150, which denotes number 11 of 150. So 2 years of international warranty, which is the industry standard for mid-tier pieces between €500 and €5,000. And I want to give due credit to Neotype here because low-tier pieces are often covered by 12-month international warranties. Sometimes microbrands within the mid-tier cover their watches with 12-month international warranties. 2 years of international warranty is excellent, and they deserve full credit for that. One also gets this fold-out leaflet, which is the owner's instruction manual, and it's bilingual, both in English and French. Clear, concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. One also gets this card, and on the front it says Neotype Limited Edition, and on the reverse it says thank you and welcome to the club, and it invites you to share images of your piece on social media. And one also gets this black and orange sticker, which has Neotype Limited Edition and also the brand emblem, which is an X. And lastly, as an alternative to the black FKM floor rubber strap, which comes fitted to the head of the piece, they also include a spare FKM floor rubber strap in this beige or khaki tone. They call this sand, and it matches the old radium tone of the Patina C3 Superlume Nova on the sandwich dial, and also the bezel, which has a tachymeter scale, as well as the baton hands. So very aesthetically pleasing. It's got ribs or grooves near the spring bar end, 2 keepers. First keeper is fixed. Now when I say the first keeper is fixed, to clarify, you can actually move it, but it is fixed in between 2 teeth on the left and the right hand flanks. Now, I've previously given credit to brands for using this design on FKM floor rubber straps because the 2 teeth on the left and the right hand flanks work very well, because you can easily engage and disengage the first keeper from it. So for example, if you have a smaller wrist and you have more length on the strap, you can adjust the first and the second keepers further down the strap to secure the end of the strap, so it's beneficial. However, if you have a larger 8-inch plus wrist size, for example, you're going to want the first keeper fixed in between the teeth, and of course it's good because it stops the first keeper moving out of position. It constantly remains near the buckle and tang end. So this is good design, works very well. Quality of the moulding is very good. I like the ribs and also the grooves. Underside is perfectly smooth. Now when I say perfectly smooth, with the exception of the Neotype logo or brand logo, which is embossed, as you can see, and it is smooth. Despite being embossed, it doesn't feel rough or scratch the wrist, and I really like it. It's good quality FKM floor rubber. The quality of the moulding is good. What I like about the strap is it's tapered, so it's thicker at the spring bar end where it needs to be more robust and reinforced, and then it tapers down in thickness down to the 2 keepers and the buckle and tang end. So at the keeper end or the buckle and tang end, it is more flexible because it's thinner, but it's stiffer at the spring bar end where it needs to be more robust. So it's very well designed, and it's smooth on the flanks. Now what I like about it as well is we have quick release stainless steel spring bars. That negates the need for a spring bar tool rather than using standard stainless steel spring bars, so it's very good. Now I'm going to be critical of the absence of a buckle. Now to clarify, The buckle and tang is interchangeable between the black FKM floor rubber strap fitted to the head of the piece and this spare sand FKM floor rubber strap. It is easy to exchange the buckle and tang because the pin going through it is a spring bar, rather like the spring bars used for fitting straps to the head of a piece. So it's easy to compress the spring bar in the buckle and tang and swap over the buckle and tang, but it's a clear production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece. I think they should have just used a spare buckle and tang on this spare strap, and it would just save the inconvenience of having to exchange the buckle and tang when you want to exchange the strap. But there we are, that's what we have. So I'll show you the other end of it. Plenty of slots in it, so this will fit from a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size, so huge variation. Angular profile to the flanks, I like the bevels on the edge of it, and it's nicely tapered from 22 at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. And again, good to see it's not sterile because we have an embossed X, which is the brand emblem for Neotype, and it's smooth on the underside, feels very comfortable. Even the embossed X feels nice and smooth, no sharp edges. And quick release stainless steel spring bars, as I've detailed, are beneficial. Nice taper in thickness from the thicker end at the spring bar end down to the buckle and tang end. So FKM floor rubber is a compromise between natural rubber, NBR nitrile butadiene rubber at the top end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum silicone rubber, which is softer but not as durable. It's the perfect balance because it's more durable than silicone rubber but softer and more supple than NBR nitrile butadiene rubber. So although it's thick, it is soft and supple at the spring bar end and where the slots are, and I like it. So I think they've done a good job of it, and I like the bevels on the edge. It's aesthetically pleasing, and the sand tone complements or matches the old radium patina C3 Super Lume Nova on the bezel with tachymeter scale, the baton hands, and also the sandwich dial, as you can see. So it is a good colour tone match, and it is good to have the option of a black FKM floor rubber strap or the sand FKM floor rubber strap. So good to see 2 years of warranty, and good to see that we have the spare FKM floor rubber strap included. So with regards to the specification, we have a 41mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.5mm, a thickness of 15.1mm, and a lug width of 22mm. The FKM floor rubber strap tapers from 22mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. Solid 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang, angular profile, brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks, including brushed satin finish on the bevels. Nice heavy gauge to it, and it does look correctly proportioned for a 22mm FKM floor rubber strap. Nice heavy gauge, and I like the angular profile to it. The undercuts are deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges, no sharp corners, and the bevels delete the sharp edges on the transitions between the top of the body and the flanks. Brushed satin finishing has a beautiful lustre, and the quality of the high definition engraving of the Neotype brand logo is very good, and it's also correctly proportioned. So we have a double domed sapphire crystal with 5 layers of AR coating on the underside, and the 5 layers of anti-reflective coating do an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the double domed sapphire crystal. Now, to clarify, this does have a very thick double dome sapphire crystal. It's not a boxed top hat double dome sapphire crystal, it's just a low profile double dome sapphire crystal, but you can see it does have a curved edge on it rather than a flat bevel, and this type of curved edge on the crystal is called a fillet. When you have a flat edge to a sapphire crystal, that is referred to a bevel. When it has a curved profile, it's referred to as a fillet. Now, the curvature of it is low profile, but it's double domed, curved on the underside, curved on the top side, versus a box top hat crystal which is flat on the top. Now, 3.5mm thick, I consider this to be excessive. One has to appreciate this does have very strong specification. It is 200 meters, which is incredibly strong specification for a chronograph. Usually chronographs are 50 meters, or alternatively 100 meters is the industry standard. Now, you'll note that this has screw-down collars on the pushers as per Rolex Daytona. Daytona has 100 meters. This also has a screw-down crown as per a dive piece. So it does have strong specification. 200 meters on the pushers, 200 meters on the crown, 200 meters on the screw-down caseback, and the crystal is thick, 3.5mm. To put this into perspective, usually a double dome sapphire crystal or boxed top hat double dome sapphire crystal is only 2mm, but that is on a 100-meter water-resistant piece. It's a given that with 200-meter and 300-meter pieces, such as dive pieces, they need a thicker sapphire crystal, but nonetheless, 2mm would have sufficed. I think this is excessive. From a subjective point of view, one could argue, well, it does give the piece a vintage aesthetic because the thick 3.5mm double dome sapphire crystal does look rather like acrylic, plexiglass or hesselite, so it does give the piece a vintage aesthetic as per a 1960s or 1970s chronograph piece, but nonetheless, the problem I have with 3.5mm here, it's not distortion, it's not that it reduces legibility, but the problem I have is it adds too much thickness to this piece because it's now 15.1. It does have a very flat case back, so the thickness isn't caused by the case back. It does have a thick case, but again, the problem isn't the thickness of the case. The 15.1 is largely caused by the 3.5mm of thickness of double dome sapphire crystal. I think they've made a mistake here. Had they used a flat sapphire crystal, which is 2mm thick, that would have easily reduced this piece by 2mm down to 13.1 from 15.1. And of course 13.1 would have been acceptable. And there's no reason to have this depth of case and also this thickness of crystal. Yes, it's 200 meters, but this is powered by the Seiko caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. We're not looking at an SW510 automatic here, which of course is a thicker chronograph caliber because it has a rotor. And of course needs a deeper case, needs a bubble back case back, etc. So I think they have not maximised or utilised the benefit of the VK64 being a thin Mecha Quartz caliber. That's the point I'm making. This could easily be 200 metres with a 2mm thick flat sapphire crystal, and the case could have also been made more shallow. The case back is flat enough, so that's okay, but there's no reason for this to be in excess of 13mm, even with 200 metres. I think they should have reduced it to 100 and reduced the crystal to 2mm versus 3.5, and of course 13mm would have been far more comfortable. The comfort level and feel good factor would be enhanced because as it stands, and I'll show you in the wrist shot, the negative, 15.1 is far too thick. So that's what I want you to be mindful of. On a positive note, the blue tone of the matte dial is very aesthetically pleasing. So it's a matte dial, it's not textured, and the legibility is good. The black subdials are also matte, they're not glossy enamel, and also the legibility is good. Quality of the printing of the second ticks on the 9 o'clock subdial is high definition and crisp, and the 24-hour scale on the crosshair style on the 3 o'clock subdial is also clearly legible. What I like about it is the hands are black, and the baton hands contrast very well with the matte blue dial. It's a sandwich dial, so beneath the blue main dial we've got a sandwich dial, so the dial beneath it has C3 Superlume Nova, which has a patina tone in beige or khaki, and of course that matches the sand tone of the FKM floor rubber strap as I've shown you. The colour tone match is good, so ceramic bezel insert with a tachymeter scale is matte versus a glossy finish to it, which is good. Tachymeter scale is engraved with high definition engraving. The Arabic numerals are clearly legible, as are the markers, and they've done a very good job of infilling the matte ceramic with the C3 Patina Superlume Nova, which they call Old Radium because of the tone of it. And what I like about it is the matte finish to the ceramic gives it a more tool watch aesthetic, and it complements the brushed satin finish case versus using a glossy ceramic bezel as per the Cerachrome bezel used on a Daytona, for example. So I think they've made the correct decision because matte ceramic looks more like aluminium and it gives the piece more vintage aesthetic, but of course one has the benefit of the ceramic being harder and more scratch resistant than aluminium. So sandwich style is well executed. Proportions of the chapter ring around the circumference of the dial is good. It's got a nice bevel to it, and the second ticks and the hour marker ticks are also high definition and crisp. What I like about the dial is, now just bear with me, I'll move the baton hand out of the way so you can see it better. We simply have two lines of text at 6 o'clock, chronograph and then 200m/660 feet. Now, one could argue for a chronograph it's negligible information. One doesn't need to know the water resistance rating on a chronograph. We're not looking at a dive piece, but it does balance the dial. Neotype is clearly legible. The font is sharp, high definition and crisp. It's not too thick and blurry. I think they should have just had one line of text. Chronograph at 6 o'clock would be enough. One doesn't need to have water resistance rating on a chronograph, but this is subjective. You might like the two lines of text balancing the larger Neotype text logo at 12. I think chronograph is just enough information. Water resistance should be just kept on dive pieces only, but this is subjective. It's my personal opinion. Quality of the dial is good. I like the printing on it, and I like the matte blue tone. So, solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel, nice large undercut, and what I like is there's a chamfer on the undercut, so visually it looks aesthetically pleasing. Concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the edge of the undercut bezel, and it's very good. It's low profile, and the flat profile to the tachymeter ceramic bezel insert is done very well. What I like about it is the flat profile to the bevel tachymeter ceramic bezel insert allows the double dome sapphire crystal to project above it with the fillet edge, as I've detailed, which is curved, versus a flat edge which would be beveled. But this would look far better, and of course, as I've detailed the reasons why, it would be better if it were a flat sapphire crystal versus a 3.5mm double dome sapphire crystal. Case is solid 316L grade stainless steel, longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the top of the lugs, longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Nice fine grained satin finishing, beautiful luster to the flanks, beautiful luster to the top of the lugs. Crisp edges to the transitions. There are no bevels, but they have deburred the transitions very well, so no sharp edges to the crisp edges, which is good. Also, the tips of the lugs have bevels, and that deletes the sharp corners, and it's very well finished. Beautiful luster to the top and the flanks of the case, and I really appreciate the luster. It's very good quality brushed satin finishing. Large mirror polish bevels on the undercuts to the flanks. This deletes the sharp edge. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor because the edge of the undercuts is not sharp and therefore doesn't scratch the wrist. On the screw down crown and screw down pusher side, also we have large bevels on the undercuts of the crown guards. Crown guards are correctly proportioned, and I like the screw down crown is recessed in between the crown guards, so it's not oversized, and it's easy to get good purchase on the coin edge crown, and also the coin edge collars on the pushers, rather like a Rolex Daytona. So let's test the screw down crown and also the chronograph complications. So first we'll test the crown. Coin edge crown, solid 316L grade stainless steel, large bevel which deletes the sharp tips of the coin edge teeth, and it is embossed with the X, which is the brand emblem, and the background is matte bead blasted effects, so very well finished. It's grippy and tactile, easy to get good purchase with one's index finger and thumb, but it doesn't feel sharp. So, silky smooth, minimal number of turns required to unscrew it. Now, the negative I want you to be mindful of. This is powered by the VK64 Mecha Quartz. That does have a date complication, so to remind you and clarify, the VK64 is a bicompax dial layout. So we have a subdial at 9, subdial at 3, and then we also have a date complication, usually at the 6 o'clock position. This does have a date wheel beneath the sandwich dial. The date wheel is still present, they haven't deleted it, and I'm going to be critical of this because the VK64 often has a date complication at 6, which of course is beneficial. My argument is the VK64 has a date complication, so why not use it? Neotype have simply omitted it or deleted it, and they've put this index on the sandwich dial rather than having a date window. I would think this would look better if they had a black date wheel with white Arabic numerals, and of course it's there, so why not use it? But they've deleted it nonetheless. Now the negative is, when you pull out the crown to the first click position, there is a phantom date setting position. And when you rotate the crown anti-clockwise, you can hear and feel the quick set date clicking over to the next day of the month. And this is the problem. We have a phantom date setting position, but we don't have a date. They should have cut out the sandwich dial and put a date window. There we are. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movement. So we're now in the time setting position, and if you look at the 9 o'clock subdial for the seconds, you can see the second hand has now stopped dead. So therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. So we're now in the time setting position, light resistance, 0 joules, and it feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise, doesn't feel too stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, minimal back play. So there's no discernible difference between the VK63 and the VK64. The architecture is the same. The only difference is the VK63 has a subdial at the 6 o'clock position. The VK64 used in this piece is a bicompax Mecha Quartz, so therefore we have subdials at 9 and 3 and a date complication usually at 6. That's the difference. But the architecture of the 64 and the 63 is the same other than that. They feel the same. There is some slight backplay in the gearing, and that's just a characteristic of the VK63 and the VK64. One has to take up some slack in the gearing, but it's not excessive, it's okay. So, feels good to set the time. Hacking works well. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement, which is good. Works very well. Let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So, Feels good to set the time, and the crown is very well executed. It's silky smooth. Now let's test the chronograph complication. So screw down pushers, we'll unscrew both. Top pusher activates the chronograph, silky smooth. The collar threading is very good. Perfect interface between the internal thread of this stainless steel collar and the external thread of the pusher tube. Same again with the lower pusher, silky smooth. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel collar and the external thread of the pusher tube. So one has to unscrew both collars fully. Pressing the top pusher activates the chronograph. Now what I like about it is, like the VK63, the VK64 has a nice crisp action to it. The pushers are heavily sprung loaded, and in terms of resistance it actually feels very similar to a Rolex Daytona. And I like it. You've got to give it a good hard push, but it's got a nice loud audible click. Feels good, sounds good, reliable and robust. So I'm going to check it 3 out of 3 times. Nice crisp action, then reset it. Again, lower push also has a heavily sprung loaded action, so it feels reliable and robust. Now, as always, with a chronograph, regardless of whether it's a mechanical chronograph, whether it's a manual wind or an automatic chronograph, alternatively in this case a mecha quartz, I always like to check it with a chronograph resetting from different positions on the tachymeter scale and on the dial, just to check the alignment of the chronograph hand. Resets bang on the 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index on the dial, and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So I'll stop it again in a different position and then reset, bang on the centre of the 60, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index. I'll check it a third and final time for alignment. So first 2 times it's aligned correctly. I'm just going to let the chronograph hand run round further around the tachymeter and then reset a third and final time. So it works very well. I like the crisp action of the start and stop on the top pusher and the reset on the lower pusher. They feel exactly the same. Heavily sprung loaded action. It's a characteristic I like about the Caliber VK64 Mecha Quartz. It's a reliable, well proven Mecha Quartz movement made in Japan. So I'm just going to allow it to run round to 60 on the tachymeter, 80 on the tachymeter, which is 45 minutes. So we're nearly there. We're going to let it run 3/4 of the way round the dial, and then I'll stop it and then reset. Bang on the centre. So the chronograph hand resets bang on the centre of the 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index on the sandwich dial, bang on the centre of the 60-minute mark on the chapter ring. Perfect. 3 out of 3 times. Let's test screwing the collars back down. Silky smooth. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the screw down collar and the external thread of the pusher tube. We'll test the lower one. Immediate thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel collar and the external thread of the pusher tube. Fantastic. It's as smooth as the screw down collars on a Rolex Daytona. And I want to give due credit to Neotype. This is what I like about this piece being assembled in France, and also the quality control and regulation of their calibers taking place in France, because the quality control is therefore higher than if this piece were made in China. And that's the benefit of this being Neotype, being a microbrand based in Paris in France. Their quality control and the regulation of their calibers takes place in France. So screw down collars work well. Coin edge finished, nice large chamfer on the top of the coin edge collars, and that deletes the sharp tips. Grippy and tactile, correctly proportioned. The pushers are sterile, but they're concentric CNC lathe tool machined, which is good. And the crown has a matte bead blasted background with the embossed X emblem, as you can see. Correctly proportioned. I like the proportions of the pushers, the collars, and also the coin edge screw down crown. Now, 200 meters is strong specification. That's the benefit. But again, this is excessive. This is a chronograph. It is not a dive piece. It does not need to have 200 meters. 50 meters or 100 meters does suffice for a chronograph. Yes, they could have used screw down collars as per a Daytona, but 100 meters would have been enough. Same applies to the screw down crown. Yes, a screw down crown is better than a push pull crown. That's a given. But again, they could have used a screw down crown and 100 meters. 200 is excessive, and really this does not need 3.5 millimeters of thickness on the crystal. It's too thick at 15.1 as a result. But that's the specification. It's strong. So let's look at the strap in detail. So this matte FKM floor rubber strap is the same as the sand one. We've got ribs and also grooves, which are moulded very well. Large bevels on the flanks, plenty of slots for the flat tang to engage in. 6 to 8 inches is good. And I'll look at the case back in detail. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, screw down case back provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 metres, and again this is excessive. They could have made the case back 1mm thinner and made it 100 metres versus 200. This case back would suffice for a dive piece. Of course 200 metres would be necessary, but for a chronograph 100 is enough. And so they could have reduced this by 1mm, and that would have reduced the piece from 15.1 down to 14.1, which of course would be beneficial. But on a positive note, it's laser etched with high definition laser etching. So to clarify, this case back is not engraved, it's laser etched, and the laser etching looks black versus engraving, which would of course look silver. So we've got the X brand emblem, and we also have the limited edition number 11 of 150 pieces, and of course the unique serial number of the piece. It says limited edition, 316L stainless steel, Neotype, designed in France. We've got screw and unscrewed direction arrows for the case back, and water resistance rating 20 ATM, which denotes 200 metres. The quality of the laser etching is good. The benefit of laser etching versus it being engraved is it's perfectly smooth, so no sharp edges to engraving. That's the benefit of laser etching. Very low profile, despite being too thick. As you can see, it's a nice flat screw down case back. 200 metres is excessive. It's 1mm thicker than it needs to be, but on a positive note, it's very flat. The milled slots are deburred and chamfered. Concentric CNC lathe tool machining is very aesthetically pleasing because it refracts the light rather than reflecting the light, as per a mirror polished case back like a Rolex or Tudor piece. So the case back is smooth, it is comfortable, and it does allow the piece to sit very close to the wrist. Underside to the head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, beautiful lustre, and as I've detailed, the four tips of the lugs have large bevels which delete the sharp corners. Large mirror polished bevels on the undercuts to the flanks delete the sharp edge, so the comfort level and feel good factor is good. Finishing of the head of the piece is also good. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot, just bear with me. I'll remove my Concord 40 and then I'll continue. So as I've detailed, this FKM floor rubber strap will fit from a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size. So plenty of length, plenty of adjustment on the slots. You can see what I like about it is plenty of length. This is a pleasant surprise because you'll know from my previous reviews, often rubber straps are made to fit the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5-inch wrist size, and therefore they're usually a fraction too short, half an inch too short for my wrist. This comes on a strap which is long enough for an 8-inch wrist. You can see I can easily engage the end of the strap in the two keepers, and there's still some length. So 6-inch minimum on the minimum slot up to maximum 8-inch, as you can see. Plenty of length. It's a very comfortable strap and surprisingly soft and supple for an FKM floor rubber strap. Stiffer than silicone rubber, softer than natural rubber or NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber. It's the perfect compromise. The ribs and the grooves are very aesthetically pleasing. They add interest to the strap. 22mm is correct. I'm going to say correct because this is a large 41 head of the piece. If this were a 39 or a 40, 20mm would be the correct lug width, but for a large 41 with wrist presence, 22 does look good because the FKM floor rubber strap doesn't look undersized. Had they used a 20mm lug width, a 20mm strap would have looked too slender for a 41 head of the piece. In terms of diameter, it does remind me of the Omega Speedmaster. That's the kind of proportions we're looking at here. So needless to say, at 41, this is clearly best suited to collectors with a large 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. If you have a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist, you can rule this piece out because needless to say at 41, it dominates the wrist too much. Even on my large 8 inch wrist, this does dominate the wrist. It does have serious wrist presence. Now, lug to lug is good. It's 48.5. You'll know from my previous reviews. 48mm is the perfect sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 or a 7 to 8 inch wrist. This is just 0.5mm, half a millimetre above the perfect 48 sweet spot, so that is correct for a 41 diameter head of the piece. However, you can see the problem. The main negative of this piece above all else is the thickness. 15.1 is too thick. Now the thickness isn't caused by the case back, despite it being too thick by 1mm, because it's 200 metres, which is unnecessary. It should be 100, but the case is quite deep. The case doesn't need to be that deep for a VK64. We're not looking at an automatic such as the SW510, which of course is a thick caliber. So they could slim down the case because the flanks do look very tall and slab-sided, and it does sit on top of the wrist like a block or slab of 316L grade stainless steel, versus wrapping around the wrist like a tonneau case. Yes, the top of the lugs are curved, and it does curve around the wrist, but you can see the problem. We have this large gap beneath the tip of the lugs, and although the strap is flexible, the problem is the case just is too thick. They could reduce the thickness of the case by 1 millimetre, the case back could be reduced by 1 millimetre, and they could also reduce the 3.5 millimetre double dome sapphire crystal using a 2 millimetre flat sapphire crystal. That would all reduce this piece to 13 millimetres from 15.1. The main problem with this piece is the 3.5 millimeters thick double dome sapphire crystal. If it were a flat sapphire crystal, this would reduce it by 1.5 millimeters straight away. And of course, a 2 millimeter flat sapphire crystal would still provide 100 meters of hermetic seal, which would be enough for a chronograph. So I think they should produce a V2 version of this, and what they should do is slim down the case by 1 millimeter, reduce the case back by 1 millimeter, and reduce the crystal from 3.5 down to 2 millimeters, reduce it by 1.5. So they could save 1.5 on the crystal, 1 millimeter on the case, 1 millimeter on the case back, so the cumulative effect is 3.5 saved. That would reduce this from 15.1. That's the point. So I think what we're looking at is a need for refinements, and if they just made one change to correct the errors on this piece, it would be the crystal. 3.5 double dome sapphire crystal, change it to a flat 2 millimeter thick sapphire crystal. That would reduce it from 15.1 thickness down to 13. One simple change. And they could keep everything else the same and it would still be 13. So very easy to change a double dome sapphire crystal, change it for a flat sapphire crystal with a V2 version. But that's what we have nonetheless. So you can see the thickness now. You'll know from my previous reviews, 13mm and below is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff, regardless of whether it's a 39, 40 or 41, etc. 13 is the sweet spot. 15.1 means it's more difficult to slip underneath a shirt cuff because it's 2.1 too thick. That's the thing. So, regardless of wrist size, 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, the tall flanks of the case are slab-sided, so it does look like a thick block of stainless steel. The other problem is the 3.5 thick double dome sapphire crystal. More difficult to get under a shirt cuff. 13 would be beneficial, 15.1 is 2.1 too tall. That's the problem. So needless to say, this is clearly best suited to collectors with a larger 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size. As I've reiterated, if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you can rule this piece out because too much wrist presence at 41. Lug tug is good at 48.5, but 15.1 too thick for a smaller wrist. And we do have some overhang, as you can see on the tips of the lugs, even on my large 8 inch wrist. But on a positive note, 22mm lug width is correct. FKM floor rubber strap does balance it well because there's plenty of meat on it. Buckle and tang has a nice heavy gauge to it. That does balance the strap. So strap does actually distribute the weight well. What I like about it is it does have lack of heft for a 41. It's a pleasant surprise. Although it's large and thick, it is 116 grams, which is as to be expected. I would expect this to be circa 120 to 125 grams with a 41 head of the piece with a 22mm strap like this. But again, some of the heft is excess due to the 3.5 thick crystal. Needless to say, a 3.5mm thick crystal is heavier than a 2mm flat sapphire crystal. This actually does add some heft to it. 116 grams is okay for 41, but if they reduce the thickness of the crystal, reduce the thickness of the case and reduce the thickness of the case back, that would reduce this piece down to circa 100 to 105 grams. And of course, again, that would enhance the comfort level and feel good factor. So reducing the thickness of the crystal, the case and the case back isn't just for visual aesthetics, it's also for comfort level and feel good factor. 116 isn't too heavy for a rubber strap piece with 41mm head of the piece. It's okay. But the point I'm making is the lighter you make it, the more comfortable it is. The main benefits of the two main benefits of using a VK64 Mecha Quartz is it's thin. They haven't optimised that. The other benefit, the second benefit, is it's lightweight. The VK64 Mecha Quartz is lighter than a mechanical chronograph, such as the SW510 automatic or the SW510M manual wind version. Automatics and manual wind calibers are of course heavier than mecha quartz calibers, so they haven't utilised or maximised or optimised the maximum benefit of the VK64 being thin and also light. Really, 116 grams is excessive for a VK64 piece. That's the point I'm making. This should be circa 100 grams. So, case is too thick, case back is too thick, crystal is too thick. 3 errors, and they really should refine that with a V2. But on a positive note, it is aesthetically pleasing. I like the matte tone of the ceramic bezel inserts. The tachymeter is clearly legible. Sandwich dial is clearly legible with the black baton hands, and the patina Lume is a perfect match. The old radium tone in beige or khaki is the same on the bezel, the same on the dial, the same on the hands, and also the sub-dial hands. So legibility is good. Symmetry of the dial is good, but again, they've missed the opportunity of the date complication at 6 with a bicompact style. It's there, why not use it? Case is comfortable, no sharp edges to it, doesn't scratch the wrist, and beautiful luster to it. So quality of the finishing is good. It's a large piece. If you do enjoy large chronographs like the Omega Speedmaster, of course you'll enjoy the wrist presence of a 41 by 48.5, but I still consider it to be too thick. But that's just the way it is. Right, so just bear with me. I'll put back on my Concord 40 and then we'll do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So this uses C3 Superluminova on the sandwich dial, the tachymeter bezel, and also the baton hands, and they call it old radium due to the beige tone of it, and of course it matches the sand FKM floor rubber strap. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. Now, credit where credit's due. They could have taken the production cost-cutting measure of simply infilling the ceramic bezel insert with the tachymeter simply with paint, but they haven't. They've infilled it with C3 Superluminova, and it actually looks like it's got a blue tone rather like BGW9, but if I shine my UV LED torch, you can see on the baton hands it actually glows green in the dark. Now, when I charge it again, you'll see it's a very light green tone of C3, as you can see, which almost looks like BGW9. It could also potentially be C1, because C1 has a brighter potency to the exciter. C1 is a lighter green tone. Now, under the camera, it has a slight blue tint to it, so it looks like BGW9, but I can actually tell you in reality, when I shine the UV torch on it, on the baton hands, on the tachymeter, and on the sandwich dial, it's got more of a light green tone to it. So on the camera, it might look like a blue tint to it, but I can tell you, when I hold the torch on it like this, in reality, it has a bright green tone, which looks more like C1 to C3. So C1 has a whiter tone to the green than C3, regardless of whether it's patina tone or not. And they've used the same colour tone on the tachymeter, ceramic bezel insert, on the sandwich dial, beneath the blue dial, and also on the baton hands, as you can see. Now, in terms of layers, we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the hands, and 5 to 6 layers of depth on the sandwich dial, beneath the matte blue dial. Tachymeter has less. I think we're looking at 2 to 3, or a maximum of 3 to 4 layers on the tachymeter scale. Now, credit where credit's due. The engraving is high definition and crisp on the tachymeter scale and the Arabic numerals and the markers, but I think they could have gone deeper. Now, one has to be realistic about it. The problem with ceramic is when you engrave a ceramic bezel, and this applies to dive bezels and also tachymeter bezels, when you engrave ceramic, it's a hard and brittle material. So the deeper you go with the engraving, there's a risk of stress fractures, and you can develop cracks in it. So that's the problem. You can't go too deep, but it is possible to engrave a thick bezel insert, regardless of whether it's a tachymeter bezel or a dive bezel, deep enough to take a full 5 to 6 layers. That's the point I'm making. I think they've engraved it with high definition engraving with a tachymeter, but they've only gone deep enough to take a maximum of 3 to 4 layers. It doesn't say to me 5 to 6. That's the point I'm making. Because if you look at the sandwich dial, we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers. And if you look at the baton hands, we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers. That's fair enough. I do like I was going to say applied, it's force of habit. I do like the double indices, which are sandwich dial indices, but the tachymeter needs improvement. That's the point. In daylight, there's a perfect colour tone match between the tachymeter, the sandwich dial, and also the pencil hands. That's fair enough. But I just think they could go deeper with the engraving on the matte ceramic bezel insert. That's the point. It's deep enough for 3 to 4, but I think they could go 1 to 2 layers deeper with the engraving and then infill with an additional 1 to 2 layers on the tachymeter, because initially the potency of the exciter looks good, but then it fades quicker. The tachymeter bezel fades quicker than the sandwich dial and the baton hand, and that's the problem. Tachymeter is not performing as well. But one could argue, well, you're not going to use the tachymeter, you're not going to use the chronograph in the dark. So that's the point. But nonetheless, if you're going to lume it, it needs to be 6 layers as per the dial, 6 layers as per the handsets. They could have just used beige paint. But there we are, that's the performance of it. So sandwich dial is stellar. Baton hands are stellar. I just think there's room for improvement with the tachymeter. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So you'll all be familiar with the Seiko VK64 Mecha Quartz. So to remind you and reiterate, the difference between the VK63 and the VK64, they have the same architecture. The only notable difference is the position of the subdials. VK63 has 9, 6 and 3 subdials as per the Rolex Daytona. The VK64 is a bicompax Mecha Quartz, so we have subdials at 9 and 3, and usually there's a date complication at 6. This does have a date complication, but they haven't utilised it, which I think is a mistake. The date wheel is there, so why not use it, as I've mentioned. 0 joules. 3-year battery life. Now, the 3-year battery life, to clarify, is based upon you using the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. However, in reality, you're not going to be using the chronograph complication for anything like 60 minutes per day. So although the stated battery life is 3 years, in reality, it's nothing unusual for a VK64 to have a battery life of 4 to 5 years if you do not use the chronograph for 60 minutes per day. So 3 years really is the minimum. 4 to 5 is the reality. It has hacking, which works well. And it also has a quick set date complication, which works well, but of course the negative is, if you don't use it, we have this phantom date setting position. Nonetheless, the quick set complication does work well. Shame they didn't just use a date window and show it. Stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Now just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month is better than plus or minus 1 second per day. Stellar accuracy. And I can confirm this one is running at 0 seconds per day. Plus or minus 0. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day. Plus or minus 20 is fantastic accuracy. 3 years battery life, which in reality is 4 to 5 years, is excellent battery life. No negatives to the VK64 whatsoever. It's made in Japan. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz movement. One of my personal favourites. The VK63 and the VK64's reliability is proven beyond question. One of the greatest Seiko Mecha Quartz calibers made, and I really like the bicompact style layout, as you know from my previous reviews. However, I would just prefer to see a date complication used at 6, because I would argue if they're not going to have a date complication at 6, why not use the VK63 and have the 3 subdials at 9, 6 and 3 to give better balance to the dial, rather than the cutout for the sandwich index at 6 as an alternative to a date complication. It's subjective. It comes down to whether you prefer bicompact style with the date or without, or whether you prefer the 3 subdials of the VK63 versus the bicompact's 2 subdials of this VK64 respectively. Does look like a nice balanced style, does look clean. I just would prefer it with a date, and I think they should delete one line of text. As I've detailed, it doesn't need the water resistance rating. So excellent choice of movement. Now, being critical, one could say they could have used a higher grade of caliber, such as a Miyota chronograph. The VK64 is reliable, it is accurate, but at €595, they are pushing it. I would prefer to see a higher grade of caliber from Miyota, alternatively a mechanical chronograph, either a manual wind or an automatic. So the ideal choice of movements, if they wanted to upgrade this piece, would be the Sellita Caliber SW510M, the manual wind version of the 510 automatic. And of course, bicompacts, it does support that, and it would be the perfect caliber for this piece. But of course, you're not going to see that. One has to be realistic. At €595, it would push it to over €1,000. But nonetheless, pushing it with a VK64 at €595, because we're seeing chronograph pieces in the low tier, between €0 and €500 price points, well below 500, VK63 and VK64 pieces. This is mid-tier at $595, so therefore it really should use a higher grade of movements than the VK64. I think they're pushing it too much with the price point. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So mid-tier piece, mid-tier is 500 to 5,000 euros. So we are at the lower end of the mid-tier at 595, but we're still in the mid-tier nonetheless. I'm going to declare it good quality, but I'm not going to declare it excellent quality. For this to be excellent quality, it needs to have a bracelet. And regardless of whether it's a beads of rice, flat link bracelet, oyster style or jubilee style bracelet, it needs a bracelet nonetheless. Bracelets, and ideally with micro adjustment clasp with a ratcheting mechanism with 10mm of on the fly adjustment. If this piece had a bracelet option to the FKM floor rubber straps, yes, that would increase the value proposition, it would increase the quality level of it. As it stands, it's good quality but not excellent. If it had a bracelet with micro adjustment clasp, I would upgrade it. Value I'm going to declare is poor, for 2 reasons. This does face some stiff competition from other mid-tier microbrands and mid-tier brands between 500 and 5,000 euro. And at 595 euro, this does face some very stiff competition from microbrands using higher grade calibers from Neotype. Of course, one isn't going to get a Sellita SW510M at this price point as I've detailed, but one can expect a higher grade Neotype chronograph, a level above the VK63 and a level above the VK64. At 595 euro, it needs to have that. Also needs to have a bracelet with micro adjustment clasp to justify the price point. I appreciate that this piece is assembled in France, the quality control takes place in France, and the regulation of the calibers takes place in France. Therefore, it does have higher quality control than if it were made in China, and the QC takes place in China. 2 years of international warranty also adds value to the piece, so I do respect that. But 2 FKM floor rubber straps does not say to me 595 euro. I appreciate it's a limited edition of numbered 150 pieces. Yes, that does add some desirability. But again, VK64 does not say to me 595 euro. Quality is good, value is poor. That's the reality of it. It's an aesthetically pleasing piece, but it needs a V2 version. 1mm thinner case back, 1mm thinner case. The double dome sapphire crystal needs to be changed to a flat sapphire crystal, 3.5, reduce it down to 2. They could easily reduce this down to from 15.1 down to 13 by making the aforementioned changes, and that would enhance comfort level and feel good factor. So this really needs a V2 version with the aforementioned updates, and of course I'd like to see the ceramic bezel insert with a tachymeter engraved deeper and an additional 1 to 2 layers of C3 superluminova inlaid to give it the performance of the sandwich dial and also the baton hands respectively. So it needs a V2, needs some refinement and ideally upgrade the movement. Then it would become excellent quality and excellent value at 595 euro. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Neotype LM02 Type C. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.